being, knowing, doing. When I was in theology school, the theme for the years I attended were being, knowing, doing. While of course we were predominantly there to focus in on the knowing part, that is, knowing God, we sure did do a lot of doing to get us to the knowing. We did a lot of writing papers, reading books, completing projects, etc., etc. It's interesting to note that all of this was supposed to get us to the being, to be a more knowledgeable person or to be a better equipped minister while we do the work of life in God. Yet when I sit back and think about this approach, I think about how many of us take this same methodology to how we just simply do life. In some form or fashion, we are all grasping in the dark, seeking, searching, and trying to find a better way to do life. Our first approach is largely influenced by our institutional educational upbringing, which of course is dipped in the bath of culture. It tells us firstly to go, find, and accumulate as much knowledge as we can about any and everything. This accumulation of knowledge is also said to be the way to find where you're trying to go and what you're trying to accomplish in life. Now, don't get me wrong, I do believe that the more informed you are, the better you can make educated guesses and decisions about your future moves. Yet knowledge in and of itself isn't the ultimate self-actualizing tool. We have to keep knowledge at bay for what its purpose truly is. Because even in much knowledge is much grief and sorrow. Think about it. The more you know, the more you don't even want to know because oftentimes it's just too much. Too much to bear and too much to think about. Thus, knowledge should not be weighed heavier than the doing or being of life. Also, think about this. How many people know a lot but rarely apply their knowledge to ever do something or become a certain person? A famous Christian musician or rapper named The Truth says in one of his songs, "I know a lot, but knowing a lot is not wrong, but now it's all about application like the iPhone." Theories, concepts, and information is all good, but it's not the end goal. If you believe it is, then you might as well join the Gnostic camp and strive to make knowledge your God and guide. Again, I'm not knocking the pursuit of wisdom and knowledge of things, or even the pursuit of the knowledge of God. In fact, the awe of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom and knowledge. But notice the syntax. The awe comes before the knowledge. So the awe is the catalyst that springs one into knowing God more. Therefore, I would gather to say our pursuit should be in getting to the awe. So how do we get there, you say? Is it by doing more things for God? Is it by doing more good things for people? Is it even by working harder in life? Is it by striving in our willpower towards a certain goal? Well, it is of my belief that we get there not by doing more or knowing more per se, but by, yes, simply being. Woo! Many of us don't even know how to simply be. Most likely because it often requires the mantra of less is more. When we focus in on ourselves, not in a narcissistic manner, but in a transformative effort, the being then simply becomes. For example, someone who has come to a place in their lives when they realize that they desire a more satisfying, purpose-filled life in either their daily work or their community, oftentimes takes the first approach of searching externally for that job or opportunity that leads them to what they feel will be self-gratifying. They discard their current situation as useless and seek to fill themselves with more knowledge of how to get out of it so that they can get there. Well, what is there? And how do we know there will be the ultimate fulfillment of what we think we desire? In addition to seeking more information, oftentimes one or two things happen when the download of information takes place. Either that person feels stuck as to what they should do or how they should do it, or they begin doing any and everything in attempts to get there. But what if, instead of this approach, we took a step back and focused on being instead of doing more or knowing more? See, I think being gets a bad rap and is largely underrated. It often gets a backseat to the doing and the knowing because it's not sexy. It's not seen as gain in many ways, either tangibly or results-based according to society. The beers are often looked at as simply those weird philosophical folks that do nothing and are passive in life. What a shame how much being is frowned upon or looked at as secondary to the doing and the knowing. But I dare say today that the being should be brought back to its proper place. While equally important as the doing and the knowing, I believe we should prioritize the being as the catalyst for the knowing and the doing. When we focus in on our inner beings, aka spirit person, the outworking and byproduct will be the doing and the knowing. It will drive these two things. If rooted in a solid foundation of a source that produces transformative work in the inner being, then that is when we begin to obtain a more self gratifying life. That is when we can be in situations that aren't necessarily what we prefer to be doing and simply be in it and still have purpose and peace. As a follower of the way, aka Jesus, I have found myself even switching up my approach when it comes to my faith. So many times our faith traditions or doctrines drive us in the direction of the doing or the striving, even to get to the being. They often say if we can only do more good works, if we can only do more for God, then we will be accepted or be good people. But I honestly do not believe this tactic is the way to live out the faith. In my podcast, What is Work? I detail the true doing of the faith and how the efforts to be are still work in which we live out our faith. Ultimately, though, I believe coming to know God intimately is what this life is all about. And it is through knowing God that we can simply be. Even if you're listening to this podcast and do not believe in the teachings and way of Jesus, I still encourage you to consider your approach to life. Are you trying to do more for the sake of inner peace? Has your accumulation of facts, information, and knowledge gotten you to a place of rest, joy, and purpose-filled living? If not, be encouraged today to try a new approach and work on your inner being. Yes, you have one. We all do. I encourage you, try it out for size and see where it takes you. For more content and to download copies of my ebooks, go to simplelifeconversations.blog. That's simplelifeconversations.blog. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast channel to get the latest episode of Conversation Starters.